the freedoms that we've enjoyed when we use the internet, and some of the increasing attempts to close in on those freedoms and on the privacy that we've enjoyed, or at least thought we have. Also, the Federal Communications Commission today, or in the last couple of days, slapped a $25,000 fine on Google for apparently impeding an investigation. The FCC has been looking into how Google collected data for its Street View mapping program and said Google was, quote, deliberately impeding and delaying the investigation for months by not responding to requests for information and documents. And in a rare interview with the co-founder of Google, Sergey Brin, told The Guardian he pointed the finger at the government as well as Facebook and Apple as threats to internet freedom. All this, and today also marked the beginning of Stop Cyberspying Week, all as Congress continues to weigh the goods and the bads of Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protecting Act of 2011, or CISPA. We want to speak now to Trevor Timm, an activist with the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Hey there, Trevor. We're seeing what in many ways is a battle for control of the internet right now. Who's winning and who's losing?
Well, I guess it depends on who you ask. I think Sergey Brin was referring to, when he was talking about governments, he was talking about authoritarian governments. He mentioned Saudi Arabia and China and Iran as examples of governments who are restricting the internet so much that citizens can't do what they want. Here in the US, we have a different problem right now. The government is trying to go after privacy online with a new cybersecurity bill that talks about information sharing between governments and companies. Now, the problem with this bill is that companies will be able to kind of skirt privacy laws. Normally, they are restricted from handing information over to the government without a warrant or some sort of probable cause. But in this scenario, they would be able to use a vague cybersecurity loophole to monitor your communications and hand them over to the government voluntarily. So we want to make sure that here in the US that constitutional protection stays strong for those who are using the internet and using email to communicate. And we also want to make sure that in those other countries that I had mentioned, that we can kind of push for a more open internet.
I think it's a really interesting point. When we do talk about internet freedoms for other countries, it's very often that U.S. lawmakers, people here, point to what those countries are doing wrong. I want to play something that Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said in a recent speech.
We want to keep the internet open for the protester using social media to organize a march in Egypt, the college student emailing her family photos of her semester abroad, the lawyer in Vietnam blogging to expose corruption, the teenager in the United States who is bullied and finds words of support online, or the small business owner in Kenya using mobile banking to manage her profits.
So a lot of positive words there being spoken about the internet. But as you say, there are also some issues in this country regarding internet censorship and privacy aspects. Go into a little more detail about this country, about the United States, and what is being done here that concerns you.
Well, over the last year, we've seen that Congress has tried to introduce actually over 100 bills that would attempt to regulate the internet in some way. The biggest example is obviously the Stop Online Piracy Act from earlier this year, which, thanks to a large protest on January 18th, was eventually abandoned by Congress. Now we're looking at the CISPA bill, which attacks privacy in a different way than SOPA did, but it's still a similar type of danger in that Congress is trying to regulate the internet without really understanding why. And it's not just in the US, we can see this. In the UK right now, there are a host of dangerous proposals on the table that would force Google and Facebook to censor more, that would give the government actually full surveillance powers to monitor every email, text, and phone call going in and out of the country. And there's also censorship proposals on the table to semi-censor music videos. So there are a host of different ways that governments can go after this, online freedom. In fact, in Russia right now, they're trying to use existing laws to go after left-leaning bloggers who are blogging about gay rights and environmentalism. So you can see that different countries use different tactics, whether it's copyright laws or cybersecurity laws, or just using national security as an excuse to go after free speech. And so what we want to do is make sure that all of these tactics are exposed, and hopefully the people can respond and stop them.
It is really interesting, Trevor. National security, cybersecurity, these reasons given time and time again in this country, in the halls of the U.S. Congress, to try to think about making new laws, getting in there on the internet and essentially trying to control it, trying to use it to get information. You mentioned SOPA, the Stop Online Piracy Act. There's PIPA, the Protect IP Act. These both failed when voted on because people finally understood what they were. But what do you think the likelihood is of CISPA, the Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act? Do you think this will pass?
Well, I think Congress has at least learned some lessons from the SOPA debate, which is mildly encouraging. Before, when we were trying to stop SOPA, Congress wouldn't return the calls of the civil liberties community. They wouldn't return the calls of the tech community. They were just trying to shove it through Congress without any debate whatsoever. Once they saw the power of the internet and how internet users can organize and really make a difference in the legislative procedure, I think they understood that, they have to be more understanding. Now what we're seeing with CISPA is that the authors of the bill are trying to disassociate themselves with SOPA. They actually took out the intellectual property clause last week, which is a good sign. Unfortunately, they didn't go nearly as far enough. And they claim that they're going to continue to work with the civil liberties community to make sure this is a better bill. And we're running a week-long protest this week, actually, trying to convince congressmen to vote no on this bill until they take out these privacy-destroying provisions and hopefully make it a bill which can, affect cybersecurity positively, but not encroach on the privacy rights of Americans.
And Trevor, your organization has been very outspoken, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, in opposition to CISPA. From what I've been reading, though, Facebook is supporting CISPA. We're not hearing a whole lot of outcry against Facebook. Talk to me a little bit about this.
Actually, another digital civil liberties organization is running a campaign against Facebook. They came out and supported this bill a month ago, I think, before we knew the true dangers of the bill. They came, and then after responding to pressure on Friday, they came out with a statement saying that they actually did not support the provisions that we're protesting, the provisions that allow companies to voluntarily hand over your private information to the government. They said that that's not the reason they supported the bill in the first place, and they wouldn't, if the bill were to pass, they wouldn't hand over additional information to the government that they don't already do. So it really just points to the fact that this provision that allows these companies to do this actually isn't needed in the bill at all, and that we can actually pass cybersecurity legislation without it, and these companies would still benefit. So while Facebook hasn't revoked its support altogether, their statement really proves our point in that these provisions that would destroy Americans' privacy just aren't needed at all.
Let's go back. We were talking earlier in this discussion about this interview in The Guardian with Google co-founder Sergey Brin, highly critical of what he calls the restrictive walled gardens of Facebook and Apple, which tightly control what software can be released on their platforms. I'm wondering, is this just a competitor pointing fingers, or do you think there's some legitimacy to his argument?
Yeah, I think it's probably both. Google has obviously felt threatened by Facebook for a while now. Same thing goes with Apple. And they have two very different business models. Apple and Facebook can, like you said, control the apps that run on their systems very tightly. So if you want to make your own app, you have to get it approved through the system. And, there's obvious censorship involved in that area. If they don't like your app for whatever reason, they can say no. Google has kind of operated under a more open scenario, and Sergey Brin even said that if Facebook was as dominant as it is today when Google started, they may not have been able to create Google.
Right.
Because Facebook already has kind of its tentacles in the internet so deep that it's hard to penetrate anymore.
All right, Trevor, we are out of time. Appreciate your insight. Certainly a lot to talk about, especially during this week. Trevor Timm, activist for the Electronic Frontier Foundation in San Francisco.